What's up, dude? New guy, how you doing, buddy? This is gonna be a little bit of a different video, right? Like it's normally me doing a stream telling you who to play, or well, I don't tell you ever fucking who to play. It's more about like how to make better choices when it comes to DFS, right? Or it is me trying to help you not be a donkey dick at Showdown and play like what was he, 50% on Sung JM. I mean, just people giving us money. I digress. Not the point of this video. The point of this video is to answer some Q&A. Like, a lot of people just want to know general questions about, like, DFS strategy, specifically for PGA. Some of this might cross over to other sports, but we're focused on PGA because PGA still has a month. August is still the month of PGA. I refuse to accept that it's football season yet. I'm holding on for 4 more weeks, and then even then, it's just football and golf season because the swing season's where it's at, you fucking champion. Hey, new guy, thanks for being here, man. I'm glad you found the channel. I'm the Degenerate75. I'm a high-limit PGA DFS player that has made a YouTube channel to help you and others not be such donkey dicks when it comes to DFS, because the shit's hard. And so many people just get into it, and they listen to people that either don't play or don't know what the fuck they're talking about and use that to, like, guide how to play DFS. And that's not the way to do it. I've been basically doing this shit, I hate to use this term professionally, for 5 years, but, like, by every definition, I essentially have. So I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing, and I'm pretty good at communicating that, and so that is what I'm going to try to do here. Do I cuss a little too much? Probably. Am I a little too loud for you? Possibly. Are you going to need to deal with it? Definitely. But that's where we're at. That's what we're going to do here. So I hope you like the channel. If you do, you can't help but notice there's no ads on here, you motherfather. So if you like this, just go drop me a like and a subscribe. That's all I ask. Okay? Thank you. So without further ado, I don't have a good way to put the questions up on the screen because even though I'm starting to get all this fancy fucking equipment that I'm buying, I'm still technologically a moron. And so I'm just going to be reading the questions off the side, and then I'm going to use my screen right here. You see it? I'm right up here. Hey, yeah, we're going to use that, and we're going to answer these questions. I got, I think, like 13 of them. No telling how long this will take. It'll probably depend on how much I ramble on, and I'm already off to a terrible start. So let's shut the fuck up and get going. All these questions are brought to you by the members over on my Discord. I told them to put some things they want to know about general PGA DFS. That's where these questions are coming from. If you ever want to know one, I guess in theory you could go leave a comment down here and say questions you would like answered, because this is actually my second one of these to do. If you didn't see the first one, you should definitely check that out. Surely my editor will put the little thumbnail at the end where you can go click and watch the first one, right? Maybe I'll do a third one while we still, because August is still the month. For all of you that don't know, if you're watching this in the future, first of all, thanks for fucking watching. It is 8/8. That is August 8th, 2022. And so if you're watching this from the future and you want to know, maybe there's a third one by now, right? And you can, if you want to know some questions that could go on there, just go put it in the comments. There you go. So without further ado, I bring to you Q&A from PGA DFS. First one is from my dude M. Pintron Jr. Can you explain chalk? Everyone in the PGA DFS industry has a different definition of chalk. Can you explain what is good chalk, what is bad chalk? How do I leverage chalk, eat chalk, and make sure my lineups are unique enough having leverage? Wow, a lot of working parts of that question, sir. But yeah, I can. So first of all, if you don't know, turn into the Wednesday night stream. This is a big thing, probably the most important thing that people turn into my emergency stream on Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone, the Lord's time zone, is chalk. They want to know who the ownership's going to be. I do full ownership over on my Discord, but here I just do the top 12 for everybody to see. And I started breaking it down into what I consider to be the 3 levels of chalk, right? And I'm going to try to explain that to you the best I can. First of all, we need to just define the word chalk. In the industry for the longest time, I would say that a lot of people have just used the term chalk to mean anybody that has ownership, right? But that's like such a noob way of thinking about things. Chalk is such a more complicated term than that. To me, and this is my definition. I mean, like, this is a chalk that an industry made up. So it's not like fucking Webster's dictionary has a defined correct answer to this. But my definition of chalk is somebody who has a lot of ownership relative to the people around them. Right. So let's go look. This is, for all of you that don't know, we just finished the Wyndham, right? So I still have my ownership up here from the Wyndham, and we're going to go look at it. A lot of people would see, oh, Will Zalatoris, is going to be 16% owned. These are my projections. He ended up being like 17 or 18%, a little bit. And I knew he was getting some steam. So a lot of people would say, Will Zalatoris, he's the 10th highest owned guy. That's chalk. But that's not chalk. In my opinion, that's not chalk, right? You got to remember, this is my opinion. And yeah, I fucking know what I'm talking about, but I can only tell you from my perception. Will Zalatoris at 16% or even 18% was not chalk, because when you went and looked at all the other guys around him in the 10,000s, guys like Sung J.M. and Shane Lowry, they were coming in at higher ownerships or right at him. I mean, even Billy Horschel was right there with him, right? So his ownership relative to the other guys in the 10K was actually not high. It was actually a little below average. So that by definition of chalk. So if you just simply go by who are the 10 most highest owned guys and that's your idea of chalk, then you don't fucking get it. Okay. Will Zalatoris is always naturally going to have some ownership because A, he's a fucking amazing player. So that's always going to put a little bit of ownership on him. But what really makes him not chalk is he was the most expensive guy in this field. And when somebody's the most expensive guy in a field, they're going to naturally get ownership, because rule number one of DFS is fucking people love to spend all their salary or almost all of it. So almost with certainty, something like 90% of all lineups start with at least one guy in the 10K, right? So that's just naturally going to get Will clicked a certain amount of time just because people are going to need to spend their salary, right? So I would specifically say Will was not chalk this week, even though he came in at like the 9th or 10th highest owned guy, because the other people around him, Shane Lowry, Billy Horschel, Sung J.M., people like that, were all just as high, if not higher. So that is not chalk. Okay. What is chalk is somebody like Siwoo Kim at 8,800, right? 8,800 means you don't have to play a guy like that, right? He could fit into any build. He could also be left out. But he is coming in at dramatically higher ownership than everybody else around him. That is what makes him chalk. Russell Henley was coming in at higher ownership than people around him. My boy Tom Kim was coming in at higher ownership than people around him. That's what makes them chalk. That is chalk. But then we have to take it a step further and say, well, what is good chalk? What is bad chalk? Well, to me, the worst chalk, what I call donkey chalk, is people who are way higher than the people around them, at least 2x the people around them, right? So I'm trying to remember who was right by Siwoo this week in the pricing. Let's just take Tyrrell Hatton. I think he was a little bit more expensive, but just for the example. If Siwoo was coming in at 23% and Tyrrell Hatton is roughly the same price and he's coming in at 9%, then that is donkey chalk. Okay, there's no way that Siwoo Kim is 2.5 times better than Tyrrell Hatton, right? And so because of that, that is what makes somebody donkey chalk. A guy who is gaining way too much ownership relative to the guys that are around him who are basically the exact same players. That is donkey chalk, right? Sometimes the guys, a whole range gets really high, right? Like this Russell Henley and Corey Connors range, there was just a lot of ownership in there. And so no one was particularly higher than everybody else around them, but they were still very high owned, right? Like over 20% is always a red flag. Always a red flag for chalk, right? Because, you know, like once you get over 20%, like you could almost block out 1/5 of the entire field just if that one guy dicks off, right? Like Corey Connors this week didn't have a great week, but he also didn't have a very good week. And so if you didn't play him, you almost blocked out a good chunk of the field just because he wasn't going to be in any optimal lineups or even any really good lineups. So I call that chalk, like, right? Like, yeah, I don't like it. I don't like that, you know, like they're not donkey chalk because they're not super high to the guys relative around them, but their overall ownership is getting so high, I'm getting uncomfortable with it. Although, I will tell you, I played Tom Kim. I played a fucking shit ton of him because at the end of the day, if you love somebody, it doesn't fucking matter what they're going to be. You just make sure to go play him. You make sure to have leverage on him. I had Tom Kim coming in at 18.5%. I think he came in at about 19.5%, but I played him in 70% of my lineup. So I had tremendous leverage on him, and when he won this week, it did the big guy well. So if you're going to eat chalk, and almost inevitably you will occasionally eat some chalk because sometimes you're just going to love that guy too much and not want to get off of them. But also the reason you might have to sometimes eat some chalk is because the reason they're chalk is because they tend to be the best players who seem to be the best course fit or are coming in with the best course history or are coming in with the best recent form. And because of that, that is going to make a lot of these guys really appetizing plays. Sung J.M. ended up being a great play. I think he finished 3rd or 4th. He was definitely the guy you needed to play up top, right? Well, that was some chalk you needed to eat if you were going to get to the optimal lineups, right? Russell Henley had a very good week. I think he finished T5, T8, something like that. And Tom Kim fucking won going away. Thomas the Train just fucking ran away, chugga from everybody. So, like, you have to be willing to eat some chalk, but the key is you got to determine what is donkey chalk and what is more acceptable chalk. And if you don't give a fuck about the donkey chalk and you say, I am playing Siwoo Kim no matter what, well, you better commit to him and you better get him in a lot of your lineups, because if you're not going to have leverage on a guy you play, you're just paying the fucking Draftkings rake, and that is not what you want to be. If you're going to play Siwoo, make sure you have him in at least 47% of your lineups, which, by the way, fucked you, because that was a terrible play. You should never play Siwoo in 47% of your lineups when he's that volatile. Just my opinion. So that is how you leverage chalk. Eating chalk is very simple. When do you eat chalk? When you are convinced. Because at the end of the day, these are your fucking decisions. This is your money and these are your lineups. You be a man or a woman of your convictions and you pick them. This week, I told you I didn't care if Tom Kim came in 25%, I was playing him. I was just going to play him. I loved him. He was the guy I had. But everywhere else, I don't really fall in love with anybody. And I could easily fade. I did not play Siwoo. I did not play M. I did not play Henley. I did not play Connors. Did not play Harmon. Did not play Wise. I didn't play any of those guys, right? But Tom Kim, I didn't give a shit. I was playing him. And when you fade all this other chalk, it's okay to eat a little bit of chalk. And honestly, most weeks, the optimal lineup has one or two chalky guys in it. The key is identifying those guys and being committed to them and playing them with high leverage. If Tom Kim's going to be 30 or going to be 18 or 19% owned, you better have them in 40% of your lineups. That's it. Once you do that, then it's okay to eat some chalk. And the great thing about the 2X rule that I always preach is if you keep doing 2X, you can't play Siwoo Kim, Sungjae M, Russell Henley, Corey Connors in your player pool and have 2X on all of those guys because literally your lineups won't allow it because they're all expensive and they're all super highly owned, right? So like that's if you follow the 2X rule, that will inevitably get you off of chalk. Great question, my brother. I hope I answered it. At this rate, we're going to be going for 3 hours, so I better pick it the fuck up. Question number 2 comes from my dude, David Hernandez. I shouldn't be saying last names. David H. Sorry, brother. I don't want to give away your location. In case people don't like your question, they're going to come fucking find you. Let me get a quick sip of the cold brew. Ranch waters for the stream. Shut the fuck up. All right. David H. What is your motivation for starting a YouTube channel to help people beat you at DFS? Same with the Discord. I really didn't even look over these questions. I have my editor type them all up for me. So that's a great question. Same with the Discord. Isn't it a disadvantage having things like that? Okay, well, hey, fuck you for such a great question. I didn't come into here thinking. I thought I got to just talk about numbers and see who can be in donkey chalk and shit. David H., why did I start a YouTube channel? Well, I will tell you that I'm 38 years old, and for the past 18 months, I've essentially been retired, right? Like literally my only source of income is PGA DFS. You know, I do a little bit of other DFS sports, but mainly just PGA is where I make my living. And I'm just going to tell you, and I've gotten so efficient with the process and done this for so long that literally it's only about 20, 30 hours a week I put into this stuff because I know exactly my process, when to do it, how to do it, and to do it efficiently. And so when you only have 20 to 30 hours of work that you're doing in a week, I'm going to just tell you, this is fucking a lot of you are going to disagree with this. And I'm just going to tell you, this is my personal experience. Maybe it's different for you. It is not healthy for a 38-year-old to be fucking retired. That's a fucking fact. Human beings in their, whatever you want to call me, middle age, need to work. You need to do work, right? And I was not doing it for a long time, and I was fucking bored. I would just go golf every day. People are like, oh, that sounds like a lovely life. No, it's fucking not, because then you don't feel like you've earned anything. You don't feel like you've earned, oh, hey, my favorite show's coming on tonight. I'm going to relax and watch my show. Or, hey, I'm going to go on vacation in a month because I've earned that. Like when every day is a fucking vacation, you don't feel like you've earned anything, and nothing ever feels special, and it's not fucking healthy. And so I realized that I needed something to dedicate my time and effort to. And then I thought, well, fuck, what could you do? Like, you need a fucking hobby, loser. And so, like playing golf all the time is great, but like that only kills 4 hours in a day. What the fuck do I do with the other 10 hours I'm awake? And so I realized that, well, what are you really good at? I'm really good at teaching. I did it for 12 years. I'm fucking objectively amazing at it. And I'm really good at helping people understand stuff. And I'm really good at PGA DFS. And so I thought, hey, why don't I just fucking make a channel doing this shit and help people get better at it, specifically at Showdown, where I saw that there was a huge hole in the industry. And so I started making content for that. It took off. Then it's evolved into week-long. And you might see on the stream this Wednesday, it's about to evolve even more. So that's your question. That answers your question. I needed something in my life to fucking do, and that's what I did. And it's amazing because now, like when I put my head down on my pillow at midnight, my ass passes right the fuck out. For the past 18 months before I had this YouTube channel, I just lay there in bed because you're not fucking tired when you don't fucking do anything any day or all day, right? That's just a fact. That's a fact. The other part of your question, same with the Discord, isn't it? Yeah. So for all of you that don't know, I have a Patreon. This is not a shameless plug. All those people that sign up for my Patreon to support me get to be active in my Discord. And so because of that, I have essentially started, when I made this YouTube channel, I realized, hey, you know what? For all of you that don't know, this shit's very expensive. I've got like 3 computer screens. I've got a fancy chair, a fancy desk, a fancy computer, all these lights, iPad, shit mounted to the walls. I've spent legit. Like, in 3 months, you would not believe how much money I spend on this. Plus, I pay my editor for all these thumbnails and to post these podcasts and all the shit I do, because trust me, I can't do it. And I was realizing, wait a second, I am running a free YouTube channel where I'm giving people knowledge to turn around and beat my ass at DFS. So I'm essentially fucking myself at DFS so that I can help others. But by helping others, I am now going to probably win less at PGA Showdown, where I've done so well. And so not only was am I going to win less at PGA DFS? This was the really important part. I was paying for all of this fancy shit right here. This is my second mic, right? Fancy headphones. And I was paying for all this with my DFS winnings, right? So I have my DFS winnings, which is super hard to win at in the first place. I consider it a true blessing that for the 5th year in a row, I'll be a profitable player, that I was essentially subsidizing my YouTube channel with my DFS winnings, and then that YouTube channel turns around and fucks me and makes me not win as much at DFS, right? And so that was why I created the Patreon, was to help offset all those costs. I have hundreds of supporters. I appreciate all of them, and that is why I created a Patreon. It probably pisses some people off, and they're, oh, it's a money grab. I mean, what the fuck ever. It's voluntary. And a lot of people like it, and they get way more access and information from me over there. They like it. If that's interesting, go check it out. There it is, fucking right there. If not, just keep watching the free shit on YouTube, bro. I don't give a fuck. All right, moving on. Next question. By the way, go like and subscribe. I just realized I have my YouTube thing up here. KGold86 wants to know, when you're creating your stats model, how are you determining the important for the course? All right, there's a lot of parts of this question from K Gold, so I'm going to just break this apart one at a time. Well, the first thing is by the way, this is Fantasy National. Fucking look me in the eye right now, new guy. This is not a fucking plug for Fantasy National, okay? They piss me off weekly. I've already canceled my membership. They've just given up on trying to provide a quality product anymore. So this is not an advertisement. But I will say this. There is nothing out there in the industry that I have found that I can make customized stat models that I want to look at. Hopefully that's coming, and if it does and they want to partner up with me, I will pump it up a ton, because there needs to be good custom making stat model out there. So I'm just going to use Fantasy National because it's what I've used for the last 5 years. So when making your model, the first thing I do is I just go look at the past few years, right? Like I go look at, so they played, this is the week of the St. Jude's, because remember, this is August 8th right now. And I go look and I see, well, the guys who did well last year, what did they do well in, right? Like, I notice, hey, approach seemed really important, but approach is always important, right? And I just go look for these key statistics, and I'm kind of looking, what were some things like good drives? It seems like on this course, if you're not in the fairway, good drives was really important. Greens in regulation was really important. Bogey avoidance, stuff like that. I just go and I look at what actually happened at that course, and I look at a 3 or 4 year period, right? Like it seems like, like you see, all those guys picked up strokes on par 3s from 175 to 200. But you got to realize they're not most of these guys are just breaking even or picking up 1 or 2 strokes. I want to see the things where guys are consistently picking up 4 or 5 strokes, right? Like it seems like par 4 scoring was essentially the most important thing on this course last year. Specifically, it looks like 450 to 500. So those longer, more difficult par 5s were really important. I also go look, and I just do this across multiple years, and I see where are they picking up the most strokes. Like proximity from 200 plus, it can't just be a coincidence that every single guy in the top 10 picked up strokes gained from proximity 200 plus. So that's going to be a lot. And I look at that, and I go look at it over multiple years. And then I mix in, things like the putting surface and the course history, and I just put it into a model. How do I determine what percentages to give each one? Well, that's pretty simple. I look at which one do I think is going to have the biggest impact. Usually that's going to be a thing like ball striking, something like that. Things that's never going to be high on my list are going to be course history, the putting surfaces. I want to see those things and I want to consider them, but they're not going to be high on my model. And the last thing I would tell you about, well, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I will tell you, people fall in love with their fucking models. I hear people, arguing about what are good things to put in your models. And if you're a fucking model nerd, you don't fucking get it. You never will. A model should at most take up, I would say 25% of your decision making. And for me, I largely use my model to find sleepers, right? Up high, I'm just playing leverage, and that's how I roll, right? Like I'm just going to go take Tyrrell Hatton at 8% and you go play fucking, who was it? Corey Connors at 20%, right? Whatever. I mean, that's easy. That's just gameplay. That's just game theory. All right. And then she also asked about good and bad chalk. Are you willing to eat in a single lineup? Yeah. So when it comes to chalk, I've warmed up to this idea about total ownership. I think you want your cumulative or your aggregate ownership for an individual lineup to be under 75%. It seems like 60 to 75% is a good way to have some leverage, but also not just play all fucking punts, right? So for me, if I had Tom Kim in a lineup last week at 19%, and I also wanted to put him with Shane Lowry, who I had 18%. Well, those first two spots have already eaten up 37% of my projected ownership, right? So I'm going to go start putting them with some guys that are coming in at like 5 or 6% and stuff like that. And that's kind of how I balance it, because like to just fade all chalk is silly. To me, it's just about fading the truly donkey chalk, right? And a Siwoo Kim at 23% is true donkey chalk. Brian Harmon at 19% is true donkey chalk. Like, what are you doing? Right? And you say, well, Brian Harmon's donkey chalk. Why isn't Shane Lowry donkey chalk? Because Shane Lowry's fucking a way better player. He's not super high ownership relative to all the guys around him. And most importantly, he's not a fucking hobbit. There you go. That's the answer. All right, continuing on. I told you, K Gold has a very long question here. All right. How do high stakes versus low stakes vary? What a great question, right? So for all of you don't understand the question, she's talking about like entry fees here. Like there's the $500 contest, right? And $555 for one lineup is too rich for most people's blood. Most people like to play $5, $10, $20 lineups. So what's the biggest difference? Well, I play in a lot of them. I've played in a lot of the cheap ones and a lot of the more expensive ones. And I'll just tell you, the easiest thing, the single most important thing to remember about them is the ownership and the higher level contest gets very, very concentrated, right? Donkey chalk becomes like super donkey chalk because the guys who are playing these higher entries are playing safer plays, right? They're going to play guys they perceive to be the better plays. Like Aaron Wise was like 19% in the big $20 this past week, but he was something like 35% in the big high dollar stuff because those higher limit guys basically said Aaron Wise is a better golfer than all these guys around him. I'm going to play the better golfer. And that's a general rule from all of the high limit sharks up there, right? So the good news about that is if you're fucking ballsy and you want to go play some high limit stuff, you can get tremendous leverage on these guys. The bad news is they tend to know who the good plays are and they tend to play them, right? Like, who is it? Samaric on Twitter always puts out like the difference in ownership between the sharps and the squares. And you can kind of see, it's amazing every week how some of the sharps will be 10 or 20% higher on some guys and a good 10 or 20% lower on some other guys. Because their basic rule is they're going to play the better players and they're going to make sure that they're in their lineups and they don't worry as much about ownership. Because you got to look, there's only 1,000 people in this tournament. You don't got to get super crazy and play these super galaxy brain plays when there's only 1,000 people, right? If you get a 6 of 6 and you have the winner, you're going to be very live to take down that GPP for $100,000, right? So that is the biggest difference. Is the ownership tends to get way more concentrated in the higher level stuff versus the lower entry stuff. Even in the $200, the $100 single entry, you're going to see the same thing. People just, if they only get to make their one precious lineup, you best believe they're going to put their favorite play in there, and their favorite play is going to be what their fucking tout site told them. There you go. Okay, just finishing K Gold's question. I would think that it would come a case for higher stakes players first, as they tend to be sharper players and would pick up on this before the masses and making the leaders less owned, whereas maybe you should start to consider playing him, especially if you think that one can hold on to that lead and win it. That seems, maybe that is a, maybe she's talking about Showdown there, right? So Showdown, and in Showdown, all this applies too. And really, it's even more prevalent. And so because of that, and if you're talking Showdown, K Gold, then yes, you really can get some ownership leverage. Because I didn't look, but I would bet in the 555 Showdown from Sunday, I would bet Sung Jae Im was probably something like 60-70% owned, whereas in the big $20, he was only like 50% owned, right? So that is ginormous, especially because Sung Jae just spun his wheels and didn't have a great Sunday round. You basically could have blocked out 60-65% of the field in the big 555 if you had 6 good plays, because Sung Jae was not a very good play. Well, I mean, I'm not going to say he wasn't a good play. He didn't perform well, right? So that's something to consider. But it takes a lot of stones. I'm telling you, when you start doing a $500 lineup, a $1,000 lineup, a $2,000 lineup, a $3,000 lineup, everybody's asshole starts to pucker up a little bit, right? And it makes you kind of be like, do I really want to play Kiridesh Effie Barnrat in a $2,000 lineup? Do I really want to play fucking Brandon Wu in a $2,000 lineup? It's easy to say that once you go see the results, but Wednesday night when you're making your lineups, you're not so sure about it, right? Okay, thanks for the question. B. Young, we're on to the next question. Can you elaborate on incorporating Vegas odds to calculate win equity? Man, so this is a big thing I've been talking about. A lot of people will send me their lineups and say, what do you think about this lineup? Well, first of all, my answer is always going to be, if you like it, I like it. But the biggest problem I see when people send me their lineups is they, let's just bring one up here. Let's go put one in and see. So like a lot of times when people are making a lineup, they will pick guys and they'll be like, ooh, check out this lineup that I made, right? They're going to go pick Horschel and they're going to go pick, I don't know, Tyrrell Hatton. And I don't think I can put too many of these guys on here. They start out with something like that and they're like, hey, what do you think of my lineup? And I always say to them, like, is there enough win equity in that lineup? And what the fuck does that mean? Win equity is basically the percentage of players in your lineup that have a chance to win. And, let's throw Hovland in there. Oh, well, I probably can't make too many of these, so I'll take Connors. I think if you put more than 4, DK, like, strikes you down. This is not a lineup. I'm just doing this for argument's sake. And I would ask them, hey, do those guys, you want your lineup to have a chance to have the winner? Because let's face it, even if you have a 6-6 in DFS, there's no fucking way you're winning a GPP unless you have the winner, right? So you got to get guys that have high win equity, right? To me, a guy like Tyrrell Hatton is very, very good at getting top 5s, but in my opinion, does not have very high win equity. Victor Hovland, very good at top 10s, does not have a huge win equity. And you say, well, what is win equity? Win equity is the percentage of the time that you should expect them to win. Okay, so somebody like a Victor Hovland this week, I think he is about 25 to 1. I can't bet, so I don't have the odds here, but I would guess he's 25 to 1 in the betting market. So all you simply have to do is just go over here to betting odds. Let's go take somebody better. Let's take Rory, right? Let's say Rory's 10 to 1 because that's the example that's already up here on the screen. If a guy is 10 to 1, that basically means they have a 1 in 11 shot at winning the tournament, right? Because you're getting 10-4-1 or 10-2-1, right? Not 10-4-1, 10-2-1. So it's basically 10 on your 1. So it's 11. So basically you just got to take that 11 and divide it by or take 100 and divide it by 11, and your answer is going to be 9.09%, right? Basically 9.1%. So he has a very, very, very high win equity if we're looking at what Vegas thinks, right? Whereas if you take somebody like Victor Hovland, he's at 25 to 1. His win equity is, 4%, right? Even lower than 4%, probably about 3.8%, right? And so that's not a low win equity, but it's also not super high. And if he's the most expensive guy in your lineup, and his win equity is only 3.8%, your lineup probably doesn't have enough win equity, because between all 6 of your golfers, you're probably looking at maybe getting to 10 or 12% win equity, whereas like Rory by himself almost has that kind of win equity, right? So, and then you also have to factor in, you can't just simply use Las Vegas odds. You also got to factor in things like just go back and track it. Some guys are really good at top 10, so they get better odds, but they just don't fucking win very much, right? Like Tony Finau and Xander Schauffele used to be those guys. Now they're fucking winners, and no one says that anymore. But I am starting to notice somebody like a Cam Young. He is really good at top 5 finishes, right? But he hasn't shown that propensity to win yet. So do I really want to pay $9,300 for a guy that probably doesn't have as high of win equity? I don't know. These are questions, and that's what win equity is. What percentage of all the guys in your lineup should win? You want that number to probably be closer to 15 to 20%, essentially saying this lineup has at least a 1 in 5 to 1 in 6 chance of having the winner in it. And then if you have that winner and you have a 6-6, now you're going to be very, very live when it comes to trying to win a GPP. Great question, B. Young. Going on to the next question from a dude, Nick M. I have a tendency not to play my outright DFS based on ownership, wave, etc. Should I not do that? I feel a player has enough win equity to bet them. Should I just automatically play them as long as I get the right leverage? Well, Nick, that's a complicated question. And first of all, let me just go ahead and reiterate. I can't bet in my state, sadly, because I live in a piece of shit state. Hold on, need a drink. But what I can tell you is if I could bet in my state, so often what I would do is I would just go over from this last week and I would have just dropped a big bet on Siwoo Kim, a big bet on Sung Jae, and a big bet on Tom Kim, and I would have just faded all their asses. And knowing if any of those guys win, I would have hit, right? But I can't do that, so I have to be a little bit more selective, and I can't hedge that way by my outright betting. I will tell you this. If you feel confident enough to bet them, you think they're going to win, those guys have high win equity in your eyes, and you should probably consider playing them. The only time that I would not play your outright bets in DFS, it's very simple. It would be if they're going to be mega chalk and they just become a donkey chalk play in DFS. But if you loved, I don't know, who the fuck ever, Denny McCarthy, right? And you're okay eating his 15% ownership, well then, yeah, if you're going to bet him, then you should probably also be willing to play him, right? The only exception to that is if their ownership is getting so ridiculous and DFS, I would use that to hedge, right? I would use that to hedge. I would still keep my outright bet on them. I just wouldn't play them in DFS because you got to remember, DFS is a game. It's a much different game than betting. We're trying to beat tens of thousands of people, and we need to get leverage. And the way to get leverage is to fade donkey dick chalk. Thanks for the question, Nick. I hope I answered it well. David M. wants to know, what is the different strategy for single entry, 3 max, and 20 max strategy per ownership and contest size? All right, well, that's a very vague question, and I'm not exactly sure what you want to know. So first of all, and you need to remember the first thing that we need to know, the difference between a single entry and a 3 max compared to a 20 max. A 20 max, the ownership gets a lot closer to like the big MMEs. That's mass multi-entry, the 150s, right? And the ownership gets very spread out because people have 20 lineups, so they can kind of mix and match all the guys from their player pool they like. But in a single entry and a 3 max, they have to have a very, very condensed player pool, assuming they're not a fucking moron who's playing 18 different guys across 3 lineups. And so because of that, ownership gets super concentrated in single entries and 3 maxes. So in all of my 3 maxes and my single entries, I purposely make a point to go grab guys from my player pool. These are guys I like, not just random slapdicks where I'm just playing some guy hoping and praying. These are guys I like. Like, for instance, Brandon Wu. I had so much Brandon Wu this last weekend. Hayden Buckley was another one. I made a point to go toss them in all my high-dollar single entries because I knew they were going to be like 2% owned, and I really liked them. I also did it with Matt Wallace, so like, I'm not trying to act like I'm a fucking genius here. I also whiffed on one of them. And Hayden Buckley is a fucking bitch. But anyways, I make a point to go put those 2% guys in those lineups, knowing that I'm gonna, they might be 5% in the big $5, but they're only gonna be 1 or 2% in the single entry because people are not gonna use their single entry, their one precious single entry, or even their 3 max to get Hayden Buckley and Brandon Wu in their fucking lineups, right? So that is really how I like to attack those. Is I like to, I still play the guys I like. I still had a lot of Tom Kim in them and stuff like that, Shane Lowry, Will Zalatoris. But then what I do is I go make sure that I stuff at least 2 or 3 really low-owned guys in there, knowing that if they fucking pop, and Brandon Wu there for a while looked like he was going to win the tournament, and I would have had him at 1% and all my high dollar single entry and 3 maxes. So that's what I like to do. In the 20 max, it just becomes about balancing your player pool. It's about selecting a nice type player pool. For me in a 20 max, I do 13 to 15 players. At least 4 of those guys, and I get them from all the different price ranges, right? Probably 4 of them above 9K, probably about 5 or 6 of them in that 7.5 to 9K range, and then everybody else 7.4 and lower. And then I just kind of mix and match them, but I make a point to get at least 4 of those guys in probably about 50% of my lineups, and I call that my core, right? And that's how I do it. I don't worry too much about contest size. Like, let's say I'm doing a $100 single entry and there's one with 10,000 people in it and one with 500 people in it. I still want that 1% Brandon Wu in either one of those lineups because it's still going to give me tremendous leverage on the field. So I don't worry about that. A lot of people, when the contest gets smaller, their assholes, pucker up. Twice I've used that term already, and they naturally don't want to go play someone risky like that. But to me, when there's 500 people in a GPP or there's 10,000 people in a GPP, one thing doesn't change. It's still a fucking GPP, and I still got to beat every one of these motherfathers. And so when I think like that, I don't give it much thought as, there's only 500 people in this one. I can't play that guy. No, if I'm going to go play him in the one, if I'm going to play him in a $200 single entry with 10,000 people, I'm going to play him in a $200 single entry with 500 people. That's how I do it. I don't play scared. I'm a true believer. If you play this game scared, if you play DFS scared, or you do it with other people's picks or other people's process, you're going to be a fucking loser at this. This is why I'm always shitting on tout sites. You got to have your process. You've got to make your own picks. People that provide you tools, that's cool because you're using their tools to become your own player, right? But people that provide you picks, fucking run for the hills. All right, question 7. Michael Z, excuse me, the guy we using last names. Would you explain the strategy you use when playing tiers and contests? Yeah, so PGA tiers is like completely forgotten about, and I love it. I fucking love it. It is because if you at the end of the day, it's this whole DFS thing. Everybody's got their picks, and they've got their I've got my picks, and I've got my and really, if you want to know the truth, it really comes down to ownership. And there's nowhere easier to exploit ownership than in tiers, right? We are a little bit handcuffed when it comes to regular main slate DFS because like we have salary confines and stuff like that kind of make us land at certain spots of the salary range. But when there's tiers, we don't got to fucking worry about that. Basically, all we got to do is go look at who is going to be popular in week long and just know that that's going to cross over to tiers. So in theory, you should just go play the 1 or 2 lowest owned guys in all the different tiers. maybe 3 if you're playing a whole bunch of lineups, and then just mix and match them left and right, right and left, right and left, left and right. Just keep mixing them. And if you end up probably just 5 of those 6, you have the lower owned guy as the highest scoring guy out of those categories. It doesn't even have to be all 6. You will fucking smash. Because I'm talking like Rory versus a, I don't know who else might be in there, like a Victor Hovland or something. We're talking like Rory will be 35% and Hovland will be 5%. And it's just such incredible leverage. And there's just no way that Rory's ever going to outscore him 7 times, right? Like he's 7 times more likely to outscore him. So tiers is the ultimate leverage game. I wished more people played it because then they would make bigger prize pools and there'd be such an edge. But yes, tiers is tremendous because all of this PGA DFS, that's why it's the best sport to play, because it's a game theory game and not a fucking computer nerd game. It's about leverage, and you can get such great leverage in tiers. And I will tell you, all that applies to NFL. That's why I love NFL tiers, because people like don't understand. They're like, I got to play this guy. Well, do you have to play him or do you want to play him? You FOMO SOB. All right, we got another mega question here from Opat Lion. No, if I can say it. All right, I'm rethinking my Saturday and Sunday showdown contest selection and was considering what Brick said on your last podcast. That's right, motherfathers. I got a podcast called the Degenerate75 Talks Golf with Smart People. You should fucking go listen to it. It'll probably be in the description here. When you're down there giving a like and a sub, go check out the pod. I've had on some fucking home run guests. Awesome-o, Brick75, Andy Lack, all kinds of great guests. Go check them out. I just talk golf with fucking smart people. If you can't figure it out on the title. All right, so based on what Brick said in your last podcast, my question is, if you had a $200 budget, would you enter a single entry or 25 lineups into the $8? All right, so that's a great first part of the question, right? He goes on to say that it seems like you're going to get a better ROI on the $8 than you will on the $200. And so that makes him kind of lean towards the $8. And that's such a great point that he makes because it is such a misconception. In a given week, if you play a $200 single entry or you play 25 lineups in the $8 on Saturday or Sunday showdown, in the short term, you will probably 25 times more likely get a better ROI, return on investment from your $8 lineups than you will your $200 single entry, right? Because it's very simple. And with those 25 lineups, almost certainly you'll get 1 or 2 of those to cash, right? So at least you'll get $32 back on your 200, right? So even though that's not like a true return on investment, it's like a return on investment that you didn't lose everything, right? Whereas most weeks when you do a $200 single entry, what is the payout rate on those? About 20% make the cash. So you should probably only expect to cash that $200 single entry ticket 1 out of every 5 weeks. Let's say you're really, really good at showdown, 1 out of 4 weeks, right? I hate to burst your bubble. So in the short term, it would almost certainly seem that, hey, at least I get a couple bucks back on these $8 single entries. But now let me tell you why all that thinking is fucking wrong, my man. If you're playing PGA DFS in the short run, you're already a loser. You're not going to make it. You have to view everything in the long run. I can't tell you how many times I get messages from people saying, oh, I've lost 5 weeks in a row. I'm doing something wrong. Bro, I lose 5 weeks in a row all the time, and then I'll go win 2 or 3 weeks in a row, or I'll hit a really big one to offset those 5 weeks in a row. It just happens, right? Because you got to remember you're playing GPPs, and in GPPs, 80% of people aren't winning, right? And that's not even a fair number because how many times do you cash in a GPP, right? You get a couple lineups that cash, but you're still losing on the overall week. Losing in a given week is usually somewhere between 80 and 90%, right? I lose about 3 out of every 4 to 4 out of every 5 weeks. So because of that, like I understand that I'm playing the long game. And when you're playing the long game, you don't worry about any one individual week or contest. You just understand that you're doing things right. In the long run, it's going to pay off. And those $8 contests, I know the specific one you're talking about on Saturday and Sunday Showdown, that thing has the worst fucking payout structure. It's usually a $35,000 contest with $10,000 going to first. So there's 28% of the entire pool going to one person. And then it drops down to like $3,000, $2,000. I mean, it's just the worst payout structure you've ever seen. Whereas that 200 has a much flatter payout structure. So the times that you actually do hit that $200 lineup, you are going to, easily get 2 or 3 times your money when you finish, 25th in that tournament or something, right? Plus, you don't have to hit the stone cold nuts in the $200 tournament versus the $800 tournament. So the reason that people like to play in those lower stakes, if you have $200 a week that or on Sunday that you're willing to lose, you should almost always play a $200 single entry. It's going to make you really focus on your picks and who you like. It's going to pay off way better in the long term because the payout structure is way better. And, it's legitimate that you could actually win one of those. The problem that people get into is they lose 4 or 5 weeks in a row of a $200 single entry and they think, oh, I'm down $1,000. But little do they know, if you just play it enough and you have a good process and you know what you're doing at Showdown, you will hit a $5,000 lineup once a year that will cover all of those Sunday Showdowns you did. You will do it if you do it right, I promise you. Or at least you'll hit 2 or 3 1,000s or a couple 500s, and it will help offset those. So you got to. My answer to this is you got to play the long game, and when you're playing the long game, you should almost always be playing $200 single entries. And for all of you that say, yeah, but there's better players up there, I tend to disagree. I think there's a difference between the level of player to $100 and $200 single entry than there is the fucking sharks up in the 555s, the 3180s, the 2120s. I've seen the difference, right? $100 to $200 players and single entries, yes, a lot of the sharks are in there, but they're only in there fucking once. And there's a lot of meddling average players in there, right? So that narrative's never landed with me. Plus, a lot of those sharks that are playing in a $100 or $200 single entry, they're also maxing that $8. So good fucking luck with that. And that one they have 150 and you only have 25. So if you're worried about sharks, I would say you're actually better in the $200 single entry. All right, I hope that answered your question. I got to get another drink. I'm getting pasty as fuck. New guy, there's not going to be any editing. We're just going to toss this whole thing up. It's basically a stream with no audience is what this is. So if you're like, man, does this guy know how to edit? First of all, no, I fucking don't. And I'm not going to have my editor edit. So fucking deal with it, new guy. I like the cut of your jib, though. I like your saucy. I like that you don't mind coming in here, tossing some questions, getting after me. All right, next question. Travis S. wants to know, hey, Degen. Hey, what's up, Travis? Do you have a process about deciding which lineups to play in which contest? Also, what will you be using to develop your model going forward? So what lineups do I play in which contest? Well, I will tell you, I used to be a noob little bitch like a lot of you probably are when it comes to making my lineups and then putting my lineups in said contest, right? This is what you do. Look at me, new guy. Look at me. You make your lineups. You're like, oh, this is the first one you make. It's always your favorite, right? You put all your thought into it. You put your emotions into it, and you got your picks, and they mean so much to you. And you go put that in your most expensive, whatever that is. Maybe your most expensive lineup for the week is the $33 single entry, or the $12 single entry, or the $5 single entry. But that's where you're gonna put your most important lineup. Do me a favor. Go back, go onto DraftKings, go look at all of your, or Fanduel, whatever the fuck you play. Go look at all your past tournaments and just go look and see how often your favorite lineup was actually the best lineup for that week. And the answer you're going to find is disappointingly low, like 1% maybe, depending on how many lineups you play. But I'm telling you, I tracked it for a whole year, and literally for an entire year, my favorite lineup never once was my highest scoring lineup for the week. Never once. Because when you're making that, you got a whole lot of FOMO, right? You got fear of missing out, and you're afraid to take risks because it's your most expensive lineup, and you're so nervous about losing your $100 on that single entry. You can't play like that, man. Now when I do it, I do one of two ways. Sometimes I just go make all my lineups and then randomly assign them to my contest because I truly don't give a fuck. Because as long as I have a good player pool, the 6 of them that are in there, it's going to involve luck to make sure that I have the right 6 in there anyways, right? Even if my player pool fucking smashes, you still got to have the best 6 of your player pool in the right lineup, in the right contest to win a GPP. So that's one thing you could do, is just fucking randomize it and put them in there. But more importantly, what I do is I go look at my grossest lineups, right? The one that starts with like Brandon Wu and fucking Kiradech Appy Barnrat, right? Just like all kinds of nasty people. And I usually go put those in my highest dollar contest because I don't give a fuck. Like I really want to, if I'm confident enough to play Brandon Wu, he should be in my $200 single entry or my $777 single entry. And when I do that, I'm going to get incredible leverage on those guys. If I like Brandon Wu enough to play him, then I should be open to having him in my most expensive lineup. Okay. A lot of you, what you'll do is you'll go click guys this week. You'll be like, ooh, I like Bo Hostler. And you'll put Bo Hostler in your player pool, but you'll never consider putting him in your most expensive lineup, right? Oh, I can't play Bo Hostler. I can't play Dumpy Bo in my best lineup. No, why not? If he's good enough to be in your player pool, if you're interested enough to put money on him, you should be interested enough to put him in your highest price lineup. And when you kind of get over that fear of trying to make your best lineup with your safest picks, that's how you're free to win big GPPs. You got to get over that fear. And I know it's tough, but that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. That's my answer. You don't like it? Well, then fucking click off, motherfather. All right, Royals Chiefs wants to know, what are your thoughts on using crowns for FanDuel and DraftKings to pay for entries? I think some people think they're dumb and sit on piles of them. Well, I mean, I'll tell you, I had over 1 million crowns over on DraftKings, and I had quite a few over on FanDuel, and I just kind of let them build up. I don't know why. I just never really thought about needing them. But as far as crowns go, how about this? If you're doing your little missions or whatever to get crowns and you're a low limit player, why not just save those up and wait till the Masters and the major rolls around, and maybe you have enough for a $20 ticket or a $100 ticket. I don't, those missions can add up pretty quick. And if you do that, well, then that can be like your save them up, and that can be a way to spoil yourself. Go try a $100 entry, and it's on the house, right? Something to consider doing. I always just save them, and then I get up, and then sometimes I accidentally spend them, and then I get pissed off, and I go fucking spend them all. So I'm all for them. I would pile them up, and then get yourself a nice treat every 6 months, a year, however long it takes to accumulate enough for a good contest you've always wanted to try out, right? Something to consider. All right, next question. Durathosaurus Rex wants to know, do you ever play captain or snake modes? Why or why not? Man, I don't, and I'm going to start because I've started looking at captain mode specifically for Showdown. I guess it's probably the only time it's offered. But captain mode at Sunday Showdown is fucking epic leverage because, I'm going to keep using this example. We just finished the Wyndham. Sung J M was like 50 to 60% owned, depending on what tournaments you played him in. But if you go look at captain mode, for all of you who don't, captain mode is just the leaders going off late, right? It's just the last half of the final group, and you get one captain. There's a smaller selection of players, and so they give one of those spots as a captain. It's obviously super important to put the highest scoring guy in that spot. So I had to imagine that Sung Jae is probably like 80% owned in that tournament. I didn't even look. And I would bet his captain spot is probably, 30 or 40% ridiculous, right? So if you have the stones to just fade that one guy, which by the way would have fucking smashed for you because he didn't do shit on Sunday. I think he had maybe 2 or 3 birdies and guys were just fucking knocking him in all over the place. If you have the stones to fade leaders, which is essentially all it comes down to on Sunday Showdown, is not fucking falling in love with position points. And now, captain mode, you get an extra 1.5 for those imaginary position points. Get the fuck out of here. And so I think that there's a huge advantage at captain mode Showdown, and I'm going to start playing it more. And I will tell you right now, my captain will never, ever be the leader, because I know that person's going to be 80% owned and they're probably going to be 50% in the captain. And anytime you can knock out 80% of the field, how do you not play that? It's a GPP. And he didn't even do that great, right? Like, Sungjae, you got to do good. Well, does he got to do good, or do you think he'll do good? Big difference there. So yes, great question. Captain mode is going to start happening. I'm going to even start adding it to my Discord for content, because I do think there's an edge, and I'm not a pussy, so I'm going to play it more. I'll tell you, my biggest flaw as a DFS player is I'm a creature of habit, and I just always play the things that I know and I'm comfortable with. That's why I'm so excited that Draftkings put out that little 3-week tournament going on this week, where like they get cumulative points over these 3 weeks of the FedEx Cup. And I'm very excited about that, because that's different, that's new, and I need to play things like that, because anytime something's new, people in this industry are like, I don't know what to do. I have to have somebody tell me. And all the people that normally tell them how to play that don't know what the fuck they're talking about start telling them what to do, and it's usually wrong. This is why like Eastlake is so great. That is why the match play is so great, and that's why I'm excited about this little 3-week thing with cumulative totals. Because, there'll be the noob takes out there, but there won't be any people playing it the right way. I mean, maybe like 5 or 10%, so huge edge. All right, NGS1323. We only got 2 questions left. I don't even know how long I've been going. Where are we at? Oh, we're only at 47 minutes. Cool. All right, I'm going to get done in under an hour. Let's go. I'm getting a drink. Now that I know I got this much time, I'm getting a drink. Reach out to me, Starbucks. I drink cold brews every day. All right, NGS1323 asked, when making cuts to your player pool, similar to the question above, how do you also feel to factor in a stab on a player or players that you have a feeling about? I feel like sometimes I rely too much on stats and ownership to a fault, and I miss out on some stabs. Man, that's a great question. I love to make a point to specifically go star guys that I think are going to be a stab, right? Like I call them my punts, right? A punt's basically a guy that you're just gambling on. He's a long shot to do well, but if he does, he'll fucking smash. And I go make a point to separate those guys from the rest of my player pool. And I go, anyone that kind of tickles my fancy, like maybe he's just popping in this one stat, or maybe I've just seen just this one thing that's kind of making me interested in him. And I go and I look at them. This last week, I had 11 of them that I was considering. And by the way, the 11, they did very, very well. It doesn't always work out that way, but this week they did. And what I do is I basically say, how many of these guys do I feel comfortable putting in my player pool? And this week, my player pool, I only did 60 lineups this last week. And so I only had 21 players in my player pool. And so I came up with a number that I was comfortable putting 3 of these punts, right? And these punts were, guys, for me to be a punt, you need to be 7,000 or lower, and you need to be under 5% owned. That's my definition of a punt. It's a fucking arbitrary term, right? So whatever I want my definition to be, it's my definition. And I decided I want 3 of these guys. So then from there, I took those guys and I said, well, all these guys are under 7K. All of them are going to be probably less than 3% owned. Which of these ones do I feel the most comfortable putting in my lineups, right? And so I just started going through, and I ended up Xing out some guys that fucking did awesome, right? Zach Johnson, Sam Ryder, Kirdash Epi Barnrat. I just kind of started cutting some guys because you can't just play them all. The problem a lot of people run into is they'll play a lot of punts, but they'll just play them in one lineup. If I'm going to play a punt, they are going to be in at least 10% of my lineups. I will never put somebody in my player pool that I'm not going to put in at least 10% of my lineups. So because of that, I can't just play all 11 of those guys. I can't even play 8 of those guys. I really needed to condense it down so that I could feel comfortable getting them in at least 10% of my lineups. As a matter of fact, I think I ended up putting all 3 of them in at least 20% of my lineups. So I cut a bunch of guys that ended up doing well, but that's kind of what you do. But I ended up landing on Matt Wallace, Hayden Buckley, and Brandon Wu. Those were the 3 punts that I ended up playing a lot of. Wallace missed the cut. Buckley actually rallied, made the cut, and was doing great, and decided his little wrist hurt, and he was going to call it a week. And we all know Brandon Wu was a smash play this last week. Yes, some of the guys I cut ended up doing amazing, but that's the game we play. Some people would say, you should have played them all and just played them at 3%. Okay, well, ones that those guys are 3% owned. Now I'm just playing the fucking field average on them, so I wouldn't have got anywhere with that. So shut your fucking mouth. So that's how I do it. I feel like you should take stabs. I feel like it should be incorporated into your player pool, the specific amount of punts you want to play. For me, I don't mind playing anywhere from about 15 to 20% of my player pool as punts, right? So I had 21 players. I said I want 3 or 4 punts. That'd be 20% of my player pool roughly. And so I ended up picking 3 of them. That was what I went with. That's how I come up with it. You got to be willing to take those guys. I have won or play super high in 9 GPPs, like big field GPPs. I'm talking like over 10,000 people. And to do that, every single one of them, had a low-owned punt guy. Rather, it was Scott Stallings back at the Genesis in 2018, or Party Marty Laird at the, what the fuck ever it was, the RSM, or, I've just had so many of these guys that are low-owned. Matthew Wolf at the, the 2020 U.S. Open, who go off and are essential nut plays to doing well. And when you have that, you can really, that's how you win a big GPP. You got to have that guy. And so I always make sure to get those punts. And I spend probably more time on my punts than I do anything else, because those top guys, I'm essentially just going to play what everybody in the community is not playing. Oh, we've got to play Rory this week. He's the best. Okay, I'll take Scheffler, right? You got to play Cam Young this week. He's the best. Okay, I'll fucking take Victor Hovland. You know what I mean? Like it's just a straight game theory play up top, because they're all so good. It's fucking any given week. But those punts, I feel like you can find a diamond in the rough a lot more down there that's going to win you a GPP. So that's my answer. You got to incorporate them. They're very important. Spend a lot of time on them, and do not be afraid to have 15 to 20% of your player pool be punts, and you play 10% of all of them. That's how I do it. I've had a lot of success with it. Last question of the day. This is from Run the Bases. If you enter the $1, the quarter, and the dime 20 max in each contest, would it be better to enter the same 20 lineups in all 3 contests, or would you do 60 different lineups, 20 in each of them? So this is a pretty simple question to answer, right? And the answer is, how many players do you like? When you're doing your research and you're starring your guys and you're making your player pool, did you end up with 13 guys that you like? Because if you only like 13 or 14 guys, like you cut it down, you're like, I don't really want to play that guy or that guy, and you finish up and you've got 13, 14 guys in your player pool, it's very simple. You make 20 lineups, and you put those 20 lineups in all 3, the same 20 lineups in all 3 of those 20 maxes, right? You make your player pool and you like 24 players. Okay, well, there's a lot of guys that are kind of, popping in your model, or you're liking what you're seeing, or you heard some smart guy say play this guy, so you want to play him. Well, then, if that number's over 20, you almost certainly want to play 60 unique individual lineups, which then begs the question, well, which ones do I put in which ones? I would literally make 60 lineups, and I would just fucking randomly put them in there. That's how I would do it, because you're never going to know which one of those is the magical the magical one. I'm telling you, just go make your favorite lineup, and I guarantee you, go make it out of your 20, and there's no way it will be your best lineup this week. It may happen once or twice a year, but it is not very common. I just got a DraftKings alert. Hopefully they're... Oh, fuck you. They're still on my shit list from how they handled Showdown this weekend. All right, guys, that's it. Hey, new guy, I cannot believe you hung around this long. I'm fucking proud of you, bro. Every Friday and Saturday night, when there's no weather delays, I do the Showdown Hoedown, right? Which is where we break down Showdown content. So come check that out. I also do the emergency stream every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone, the Lord's Time Zone. And I got a big announcement coming up this week about how my content is going to evolve. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed having you mother father. Go like and subscribe. It's been real, guys. I will see you next time. Make sure to go leave comments down there. If you want me to answer your questions next time, go drop it down in the comments, and maybe I'll do it next time. It's been real, you mother fathers. I hope you enjoy my outro.